22 minutes past 8. A new adaptation of George Orwell's 1984 is released on Audible today. It has got a starry cast, including Andrew Scott as O'Brien, Tom Hardy as Big Brother, and Andrew Garfield as Winston.
I wonder how long it will be until I'm stood on the gallows for what I'm about to commit. For my thought crime. Because the weapon in my pocket isn't a gun, or a knife, or a bomb. It's a book.
Well, the release today is exactly 40 years after the date of the first diary, Winston's first diary entry, April the 4th, 1984. The production is directed by Destiny Ekaraga and has been adapted by Joe White, who both talked to me about it.
Well, strangely, I'd only read it for the first time the summer before and immediately thought about Winston's struggle to, retain his internal voice, his thought process and his sort of autonomy within this world, within this machine. So the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about doing an adaptation was really focusing in on Winston's mind, his internal voice, and how intimate that could be as an audio piece. It's in somebody else's head, literally. And it also allowed things like humour, because he could do sort of little asides in his thoughts and very aware of what he was saying always, because he could get killed for any thought crime or anything else. But also there's a process of the external forces trying to get into his head. The voice of the party, the voice of Big Brother, the voice of O'Brien, and then eventually when he meets her, the voice of Julia. Orwell talks a lot about Winston being able to hear O'Brien's voice, so it became really exciting to play with. Whose voice does Winston start to hear in his own head?
Destiny, for you as a director, had you worked in audio before?
I hadn't. This was my first time. Sometimes when you're on a film set or a TV set, it can be quite chaotic. It can be quite stressful at times. Wonderful, but it's a lot. And here I just got to do the thing that I love the most, which is directing actors.
How did you do that then? Did you gather a big group of actors together in a room so they're doing the dialogue face to face, or were you working more individually with them?
I worked individually with them, and I think that was a great way to work because I was in the booth with them.
But then they're not even necessarily then responding to the person who's in the conversation with them in the final version at that time. It's like you're almost like coaching them through it.
Yeah, so that's why I have to remember what everybody has done so I can make sure that I've got the right performances. In my real life, I can't remember anything.
And Destiny, how exciting was it when we got two different sort of versions, two different sides, like of you doing Room 101?
I know, right? Like, it was so weird. For anyone that's read the book or knows at least about what Room 101 is, it's a horrendous, horrific scene that I thought I was prepared for, but I wasn't. One week I was with Andrew Garfield, who plays Winston, and Room 101 is basically a torture scene. And it was horrific for me to direct that. I loved it because I loved the process, but I hated it and we were not okay. I asked him to go for it and he really went for it. And it's horrible to hear somebody being tortured. And because you're not watching it, inevitably it's even worse because your mind conjures up all of these horrible images. I think my body was shaking. It was just not nice. And Joe was so kind. He came into the room and he was like, "Are you guys okay?" You know what I mean? And we were like, "No, not really," A week later, I'm with Andrew Scott, who's playing O'Brien, and he's like the torturer. And my response to it was completely different. I was now in the head of O'Brien. So now it was like deliciously evil. And I was just like, what else can we do to torture Winston? And I didn't understand what was happening to me. And I think that's what happens when you're directing, right? Like, you step into the minds, the heads, the hearts of the character that you're initially with.
Joe, it does sound like it's really a complete immersion in the material. And it is extraordinary material, isn't it? You think about this book, published in 1949. It was the experience of the Spanish Civil War and the post-war Soviet Union that was in the forefront of Orwell's mind. And yet there are these parallels and there's this resonance that we can feel today about mass surveillance and misinformation.
Its prescience is why it's been such a classic for so long and will continue to be. I don't think it will ever not feel incredibly relevant and urgent, really. We're now living in a post-truth age of sorts where anything could be manipulated and presented as truth. People can believe so fervently in misinformation. It's about somebody trying to find autonomy and freedom within this machine. I sort of very much related to trying to find also my voice and my take on it. And yet, obviously pay so much respect to the text, but find it sort of dramatically active and dynamic. It's very densely packed. Every chapter in the book has so much world building. There's so much geopolitics to reimagine. Orwell writes with a third person, whereas we shifted this into first. And it's sort of a warning. And it's interesting taking something that has sort of three time periods in it. It has, 1948, 1984, and 2024, all in one. It was daunting, but thrilling to sort of get to try and reimagine for now.
Jo White, Destiny Ekaraga, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.